Liz Crosby here with another yogic philosophy discussion, and today I am going over the universal law of one, which coincides with a lot of things. So I love this overlap because it really reaffirms, and I thought that this was absolutely crucial, especially considering what's going on right now. We have to acknowledge that we're all one so that we don't continue to accumulate karmas. Again, we are ascending as a planet. And so if we involve ourselves with certain activities that cause the accumulation of karmic debris in our vessels, that adversely affects and slows down our ascension rate as a planetary grid. So what does universal law coincide with? Universal law of one coincides with the Hermetic principle of mentalism, right? The universe is mental and we are all one consciousness. Everything is energy and everything has consciousness. And science also is beginning to say that the universe is like a thought. Thought is actually where we get thoth from, right? It sounds a lot like the word thought. And that's where the Hermetic principles come from. See how it's all tied together? So Hermes was adopted by the Greek pantheon and he became Hermes, but he was originally Thoth. And Thoth gifted to Egypt the alchemical principles, which became the Hermetic principles, right? So alchemo literally meaning out of Egypt. Thoth is the one that kind of looks like an anteater. But again, remember, because sometimes I feel like Thoth can get a bad rap, remember that you are Thoth. Again, universal law of one, again, so you can't put anything on a pedestal and praise it as something outside of yourself, and vice versa. You can't subordinate anything and suppress it as something outside of the self. So it's this illusion of separateness, and even Albert Einstein says that everything is like an intricate optical illusion. The idea of separateness is an optical illusion. And how can we disentangle ourselves from this optical illusion? So that brings me to yoga, how it coincides with yoga. Yoga Sutra 1-2 by Patanjali is Yogas Chitas Vrittis Nirodha. And this means yoga is the restraint of the mind modifications of the mind stuff, or the complete cessation. And this is so crucial because yes, now that we've acknowledged and we can see that everything is thought form, how do we go about stilling the waters? And that is a process. So it's amazing. I think sometimes people are a little bit deterred by the law of one or oneness because it sounds so simplistic that it's like, oh, that would be so boring if we're all the same self. What do we say at the end of every single yoga class? Namaste. The divine light within me acknowledges the divine light within you. So how is it that we can all be the same consciousness? It's tricky because we are only familiar with, for most of us, this one linear time frame, right? And most of us have been governed by the almighty clock our entire lives. And so to envision each and every one of us as being the same self, it's kind of mind-boggling. How is this possible? You have to think in terms of time and space, and how time and space, yes, that we might perceive them as linear, but we are all the same consciousness going through all of these different vantage points, all of these different perspectives, all of these time-space continuums, kind of like all of these unique wormholes, but we're still all the same consciousness experiencing. And so therefore, all of this information is recorded somewhere. And some people think it's all recorded in the Akashic records, which comes from the word for ether. And some people liken this database wherein all of this information is stored to the universal consciousness, the eternal soul, or Christ or Krishna consciousness. And so it's like, okay, well then how do we get there? Because this is all really fun to think about and to intellectually be stimulated and talk about, but how do we actually get there? that is a process, right? And you can talk about it in terms of yoga and rearranging the gunas or the elements. And again, you have to think of the elements also as thoughts. They're varying densities of thought form, or light, which is also a byproduct of thought form, right? We create our whole reality with light. So some people are saying, it's really popular and trendy now to say that everything is a simulation. Again, yes, it is, but then what do we do about it, right? Okay, so we're in the matrix, but how do we reprogram it? So again, the rearrangement of the gunas, or if you want to go back to Egypt and Thoth, it's the alchemical process, right? So turning the lead of the egoic self into the gold of the eternal soul. The philosopher's stone is you, and the yogi is aspiring to be able to connect to crown chakra, Sahasrara, right? Uniting Rama and Sita, which are the body and the mind. Again, the illusion of separateness is still pervasive. And so you can intellectualize oneness, but you have to acknowledge that the illusion is there, and we need to disentangle ourselves from this quantum entanglement. We need to untether our soul. I know you can't just read the book, right? You have to actually get in there and get involved and actively participate in your evolution of being. So that's really what it comes down to. When you come down to the nuts and bolts of it, we are talking about becoming one with nature again. And I'm much more for that than any other agenda that might be on our horizon with all of the different minds at work that are trying to, let's not go there. Okay. All right. So how do we do this? How do we connect to oneness? And I have a solution for you, and hopefully it works for you. But again, you have to actually integrate it. This is knowledge, and you have to integrate the knowledge, right? Jnana yoga, yoga of the thinking man, has to actually be integrated into your way of being, into your practice, in order to be able to benefit the practitioner. So we have these things called bandas in yoga. They're called energy locks, and they are unions between the chakras, which are cerebral spinal centers, or jewels, or lotus flowers. It's quite amazing. You actually do see the lotus flower blossom open when you are doing this work. So that's fun. Get excited for that. And the colors are out of this world. They really are. They're nothing like you've seen in 3D reality. Sense object, perception, stimulus. And the inner technology is really, really fun. So the bandas are, again, this is where the physical practice is actually very important. So our culture, I think, has done this on purpose. The powers that be have kind of purposefully created some distortions that are blocking us off. Right? There's a lot of narratives by which we live our lives and govern our thought forms and our belief systems. So be careful about what you take in. And as you focus and redirect your energy on Kundalini activation, you might be able to see through some of those misnomers and those misdirections. Again, I don't have anything against body positivity. Love your body, but then don't negate it from the alchemical process, because earth is still an element, which means it is also thought form. Yogananda in Autobiography of a Yogi says, the very beginning, that all of human history is woven into the very fabric of his being. And that also is, right, if I'm going to talk a little bit about Jesus, here we go. So Christ does what? He atones for all of the sins of humanity. What I'm saying is, you can't be codependent on Christ for atoning for the sins of all of humanity. He was leading by example. So yes, you too must also atone for all of the sins of humanity in order to connect through Christ consciousness, right? And when I say Christ, or Krishna consciousness for that matter, I'm referring to being able to conduct cosmic energy from root to crown. So this is where, again, the bandas come in very, very handy. Mula bandha is the union between root chakra, sacral chakra, forming the pelvic floor muscles. Uddiyana Bandha is solar plexus heart chakra, forming navel and towards the spine, kissing in towards the heart space. Jalandhar Bandha is the union between throat chakra and brow chakra, the chin lock. And then you're able to actually shoot the energy out through crown. So this is a process. Like I said, I can talk about it, but you have to actually, right? I can talk about how to do a pull-up, but you're gonna actually have to go and do the pull-up eventually, right? So you're gonna have to actually go and do Navasana bow pose. You're gonna have to actually go and maybe squeeze a block between your legs or between your arms to imprint the adductor muscles, and vice versa. Get a strap, push out, and get the abduction going as well. So there is the actual physical implementation that needs to take place. So please, please do. If you don't like my classes, then go and take someone else's classes, but do explore your microcosm. And again, eventually you're doing your own work. So I don't want anyone to think, I only take Liz's classes. Like, I don't want it to become like a style of yoga. I'm not trying to put myself out there like a brand. I'm trying to get everyone up and running so that we can all connect to our infinite source of creative intelligence within. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not trying to take your money. I'm trying to get everyone up and running because I truly, genuinely believe, and I probably wouldn't believe it unless I had the inner technology activation that I have and I was able to see into the future. Don't want to get too into that. But basically, in the future, Kundalini is the true currency. Energy is the true currency. And it's what we elect our leaders with, who's able to best conduct energy, because they're able to actually experience empathy with the collective. And so they're best at leading. There isn't really even a form of wealth and haves and have-nots in the future either. So I don't want to get too into that. But what I do want to talk about is the importance of the earth element. So again, the earth element has all of human history woven in, and you can't just do your own karmas because inherently we're all the same self. And I think this is where sometimes people that use the law of one for fake positivity and spiritual bypassing kind of drop off, and that's okay. You know, we're all on different timetables of ascension, and that's okay. But we do have to clear on behalf of all beings, and that doesn't necessarily mean your own past life history and even your own ancestral history. It means feeling into the whole of our human history as a species on planet Earth. It's a lot. It is a lot. And so I am putting this video out there because right now we've been tricked into accumulating more karmas, and there's a lot more visual stimulus than is actually happening, but it is also a cover-up for an even more egregious and evil act that is being done, which I don't want to get into right here on YouTube for obvious reasons, but just remember back to what I said about Uranus and Saturn, Cronus. And there are certain malevolent forces that are working to essentially enslave our species. And again, you can think whatever you want, but I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt that we win and that we succeed. My finite mind is not exactly sure of absolutely every single step that we take to get there, but that's part of the fun of it, right? That's part of the fun of our ascension process, of this planetary ascension. So, you know, we kind of have to go along with the ride, right? We are reliving our memories of how we make our way back into Atlantis gone global, but how we get there, it's exciting because we don't remember absolutely everything. How could we? So it's definitely an enjoyable ride in that way, and that there is a little bit of uncertainty. Sometimes that can be a little bit fear-inducing, but trust that this is spiritual war. And what is spirit? Spirit is breath. Spirit is air. Spirit is oxygenated blood flow. So what do we need to do to get the oxygenated blood flow everywhere? We need to embody sacred geometric form. And in so doing, we're able to expand consciousness in our sphere of existence and illuminate the darkness in the microcosmic map of the universe. So eventually all of the darkness gets illuminated, and that is a fact. We can only go so fast though, right? Because the earth element is only willing to move at a certain rate, and that rate is important. The rate at which the earth element moves is also the rate at which we're able to process all of the karmic debris, right? If we went too quickly, we wouldn't be able to process all of the stories that the body has to tell. And so we want to be able to witness all of the past lives, and again, remembering that we're all beings, and that we are witnessing from all perspectives as we do this work. There's a lot of information to go over, but remember, time and space don't exist, and so they talk about this in many texts. I believe Iyengar talks about this in Leon Yoga. Sri Swami Vivekananda talks about this in his works as well. Although it takes millennia to accumulate these karmas or these metaphysical lapses in our temple maintenance, we are able to obliterate, destroy these possible worlds, Om Namah Shivaya, and ascend into higher vibration frequencies at a much more rapid rate when we are actively participating in evolution. So what took us thousands of years to accumulate could take us maybe just a few years to disintegrate in our alchemical process. But again, it all depends upon how well you're able to connect with all of the aspects. So I will continue to illuminate all the things, but really quickly to put it briefly so that you have kind of an understanding of how to connect to oneness, the Akashic records, eternal soul, universal consciousness. You gotta have those bandas in check, which is why, as you all know, I absolutely love the inversions. I was not born with these psychic abilities activated because I had some rather atrocious past lives, which caused me to block them off in this life, and in the interest of surviving. But once I got past that past life trauma, I was able to I worked my way through it, and I was able to experience it and release it. And I was able to get full blown into the psychic nadis. So it was pretty exciting to go from just like black to, you know, not seeing anything with my eyes closed, seeing all of this, you know, sacred geometry and again, lotus flowers and avatars and all the things. I don't want to talk too much about what I see because we all see unique things that we're meant to see, right? Very much like not the guru, the oracle in the Matrix, right? Both Morpheus and Trinity say you're meant to have your experience with the oracle, and that's exactly it. It's like your intuitive center. You're meant to have your experience with your intuitive center. So I don't want to talk too much about what I see. I want to tell you how to get there so that you can access this information of your own accord, right? Because I can only show you the door. You're the one who has to walk through it, right? To thine own self be true. Know thyself. So how do you know yourself? Bandas, as I mentioned before, and again, inversions are very useful for, I call them banda checks, because you literally have to be engaged in your bandas to be able to stabilize an inversion in the middle of the room. And even if you have your psychic nadis activated, or you might have been born, and I have my theories. I think that some of you guys that are born with psychic nadi activation are, a lot of your past lives you were in the Brahmin caste, and whatever country or region of planet Earth you were in the priestly caste, and so you already had those psychic nadis activated in a past life, and then you came in and they were still activated. So right, we carry with us our karmic signature, we carry with us our inventory of karmas, right, our karmic debt, wherever we go. So, and in different faces, different places, but still the same frequency. So bandas, really crucial. Engage them, learn how to engage them, engage them, engage them, engage them some more, learn how to engage them even more and more and more and more and more, and then you'll get a robust stream of energy flowing through. And that's really dharana concentration. I know that sometimes people think it's the drishti or staying focused and concentrating really, really hard, and it's like, yeah, but it's also that consistent stream of energy flowing straight through your central axis so that third eye can activate. And yeah, of course, avoid fluoride in your water. Hello. But this is like non-stop. You will non-stop have your third eye activated. You won't have to do ayahuasca on the weekends. You won't have to do shrooms. right? You'll just be activated all the time. Salvador Dali, I don't do drugs, I am drugs. Nothing wrong with that stuff, of course. And if you need to utilize it to activate some psychic nadis, it's a good idea. And in fact, I did, to kind of give myself the kick in the butt, because I did not want to go in and see some of those past lives. It was pretty gnarly, and it's on the Akashic record. So if you want to go up and see, I don't want to get too into it because it's gnarly. There was some heavy persecution. The sadhus too. I don't know if you knew this, but the sadhus in India were heavily persecuted, especially by the British, because they realized that if they had their cities activated, they would be very difficult to control. So it's all happening. We're ascending, so we're starting to move through all this collective trauma that we've built up over time. So that too, again, you're not going to just release the trauma of your past lives. So you might as well just be aware that you're going to go back in as that being, and you're going to experience all of the senses. So not just sight and sound, right? Which is what we're used to when we go to the movies or when we watch Netflix, and then we're in the comfort of our own home, or we're snacking on some popcorn, and it's a lot more involved, right? Think of all the actors that really put themselves through all of the different paces of the protagonists that they're embodying, and it's even more than that, because you're actually that being, and you're feeling with everything that they're feeling. That too is, I think, a saving grace, because I realized that back to Christ, right? What does he say? They know not what they do. So what causes these seemingly more atrocious acts? And even Vivekananda would say it's all love. So even if it seems atrocious, like that person actually loves what they're doing, and it's just a lower vibrational frequency, but it's still love. Everything is love. So what I found to be the saving grace with all of it is it reaffirmed the universal laws. And when I was able to go back in as all of these different beings, I still do every day. I go back in as I'm constantly doing work. And feeling into all these different, whoever's meant to come in each day. I just feel like I'm constantly channeling and feeling into whoever wants to be witnessed. And like, I don't want to talk about who came in yesterday. You guys are thinking, yeah, well, I sometimes get really shy about this stuff, because I know that there is a lot of association with schizophrenia, and it's not the same. Although Kundalini activation is heavily associated with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is when you can't control it. And when you're doing this work and you are aware of the alchemical process, and you're slowly expanding into new space, and then you're interacting with beings as you're meant to interact with them, to untether your soul as more of a process, instead of being bombarded by these energies, and then also having them parade around and dictate your physical actions. There's definitely a difference there, and at some point you kind of lose control. And what I love about the alchemical process is I've never lost control, and I absolutely love being able to do this work so that I can really just witness it and process it for good. I started to actually kind of act a little bit like a Virgo, even though I don't have any planets in Virgo. When I was born, nothing. And I became obsessed with like the fine details and those subtle nuances. And that's especially true of the bandas, energy locks, and making sure that energetic stream is consistent. You want to be like a perfectionist, like Kelly Slater and his wave pool at the surf ranch. Like, you want to make sure that barreling tube ride is just right, so you can surf it straight through crown. You want to make sure that you have a perfect balance between the masculine and the feminine, and heart chakra especially. I always like to joke that as soon as we became Homo erectus, we started to experience the Kundalini cock blockage. And all sorts of metaphysical ramification ensued. So, but it was necessary. It really was necessary. And that's what I've come to realize too, is not only am I able to forgive people from a metaphysical standpoint and seeing how all of their actions are representative and a perfect reflection of the universal laws and how the Kundalini energy is flowing through their vortex. It's, again, this idea of predeterminism and free will. Does it exist? Doesn't it exist? I would say it exists in that you can reprogram the matrix. But if you resign yourself to staying at the same frequency, then it doesn't exist and it's an illusion. I'm sure that I'll probably get some comments on that, but you know, whatever. You guys can experiment. I'm just putting these ideas out there. This is the inception. So, and if you, I actually disagreed with my philosophy professor on that too. I was like, no, free will does exist. And the deeper I dove down the rabbit hole, I was like amazed at how all of these attachments, these desires just started to fall away like dead snakeskin. And I was like, maybe I wasn't really in charge. Maybe it was actually the desires in my auric field that were pulling me this way and that. And it was fun and I enjoyed it. Again, everything is love, but we are ascending as a collective. And so sometimes these old belief systems kind of have to fall away, or maybe just be perceived from a different perspective. So again, I still think that free will exists and that you can choose to elevate your vibrational frequency. Again, different spaces, different places. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is so fun. So as you learn how to connect to your bandas, it is basically like doing core work. I'll be completely honest, and not everybody likes to do core, I know. But the Kundalini energy starts flowing through and it feels absolutely amazing. Of course, our oneness is just absolute bliss. I like to joke it's like cosmic sex with the universe. And it just keeps getting better as you continue to expand and you allocate more energy through the central axis. Absolutely amazing. So you might start to get the body sensations first before you start to get the third eye activation. That's usually how it goes. And when you start to open up heart chakra, then you start to get what are called heart expansions, which is where you kind of get like these like tingly sensations at first, and it's almost kind of like this EMP, this electromagnetic pulse, where you're not just vibrating with all the cells of your own physical body, but you're kind of like vibrating with all of the atoms and subatomic particles that are surrounding you, and you're like, ooh, this is so cool. And then the Merkaba, or the light body vehicle, starts to activate, and then you get an idea of how to work with that. And the light body vehicle you can then send out through crown, and then you can go in and explore with the breath, the inner space cosmonaut, all these different parts of yourself. And then of course you'll want to, again, maybe go Virgo on your karmas and process all of these distortions, right? As you're clearing, as you're illuminating darkness in your field, you want to know exactly how that darkness, when it doesn't receive light, how it acts, how that creates through cause and effect and manifests things in your external environment, and maybe things that you're not wanting. Again, I love law of attraction, but I just think that law of attraction doesn't necessarily keep in mind the other universal laws. And so I always talk about in law of attraction how you have to know what it is that you're attracting so that you can know what it is that you are not wanting, and therefore you can know what it is that you are wanting, so you can stop attracting what it is that you are not wanting. But what I'm saying is you have to actually rearrange the tamas gunas, and as Albert Einstein says, you align yourself with the frequency, and you cannot negate the earth element in that process. So again, back to yogic philosophy, and actually rearranging the gunas, or the elements, is what will change your frequency. And we are keeping in mind the universal laws, and it's best if we're able to balance both the masculine and the feminine energy channels in our auric field to be able to optimize our space holding potential. And if you're just really, really flexible, then you might be kind of flaccid in some spaces, in some respects. You may not be able to actually send a robust current through the spine and through your limbs, your appendages, to be able to reach certain corners of your universe. And so those spaces may remain dark. And then again, you may be attracting what you are not wanting. And on the flip side, if you have too much strength and not enough flexibility, then there might be, again, certain spaces in your field that you're not able to infiltrate, and therefore those spaces don't receive any life force energy at all. And then that energy will be reflected back at you. It's inevitable. So it's frustrating at first because you want so badly to believe in free will. And like I said, it still exists. Free will still exists, but just not in the way that you think that it does. And so everything is operating on universal laws. And thank goodness, because if we didn't have universal laws, like how would we be able to dig ourselves out of this mess, right? So we're just so misaligned and that's part of the fun of it too, is we get to experience our coming back into alignment and all the divine synchronicity that starts to take place in accordance with that alignment. And what's nice too is I absolutely love that in the 8 limbs of yoga, the 8th limb is samadhi. So samadhi being ecstatic joy, supreme bliss. And as we immerse ourselves in this transition, in this mutability, this transformation, our evolution, right? The only constant change, property, that in and of itself is so blissful. So we're learning how to evolve again and be one with Mother Nature instead of trying to force her or manipulate her for our own self-seeking gain. And it's like such a brilliant surprise, such a beautiful surprise that what we were resisting was actually better in the first place than what we were fixated upon, which is this fixation on a 3D environment within which we can do this ascension work. 3D is important. It is. And I think, again, the New Age spiritual community was kind of purposefully infiltrated so that it could distract us. And so we were kind of given this belief system wherein it was like 3D. I'm so over 3D. I'm in 5D now, right? Like 3D is important. The third dimension is important. Third chakra is solar plexus, which is where the mind goes to be able to maneuver and to hold the body in space. It's our power center. So it's where we send our energy so that we can work in our own unique way with rooting and rebounding forces. And everybody has their own dance, even though we're all the same self and we're all experiencing and sending information back up to Akashic Records where we can all witness. Everybody has to work within their own arrangement of gunas, right? Nobody knows your body like you know your body. And so this is why, again, I really want to help people to connect to universal consciousness so that they can connect to their own internal inner guru. This isn't about trying to share my brand with people. This is about you connecting with you connecting with your highest self so you can heal yourself. I'm going to do everything I can to help you to connect to your highest self, and then eventually you won't need me anymore, right? So third eye will start to activate more and more and more as you learn how to connect to your bandas, do inversions, but also do back bends to complement the feminine with the masculine. And you can press the tongue into the roof of the mouth. This is a good one. This is a really good habit to get in the habit of practicing all the time. And the pressing of the tongue into the soft palate, roof of the mouth, will redirect the current of air up to third eye for witnessing and processing. And so therefore you'll be able to take that information and bring it back up to third eye so that it's like a film reel. The air element is very vata dosha. It will receive and transmit that information to third eye. And again, your Merkaba is activated hopefully by this time, and you're able to also travel with the breath into all these different spaces in your body. So you're not actually traveling out into outer space or into the universe, or you are the whole universe. You're actually going inwards when you're doing this investigation, when you're doing all this time travel and kind of disentangling and deteriorating all of these entities, which are energy in motion. And so I love to just see it from every perspective. I'm like, okay, so I had this little cluster and it was here and I got it in this pose. That's where I retrieved it from. So how does that create distortion in my field when I'm in this life, or when I'm in this past life, you know, or when I'm in, even when I'm in a future life, if I haven't cleared it yet. And maybe even if I'm like really feeling it, intergalactic travel, go to another planetary grid and see how maybe another alien species was able to deal with that distortion if you're like still at a loss as to how to deal with it. And of course, it's really crucial to call in the higher vibrational frequency formation. So the energy that you're retrieving is the old story, but then you have to also be willing to let in the new story. And I've been working with some of the ancient civilization priestly castes and learning how to let in the higher vibrational frequency formations. And luckily, I do have a little bit of a tie to Atlantis. So it's all about like following the threads. Actually, sutra means thread. So we're just following the threads back to source, following the threads back to oneness. And I've been able to feel and allow myself to feel these higher vibrational frequency formations because we're so used to the lower vibrational frequencies. You have to be willing to like let yourself receive a new feeling, a new sensation. And so that is my quick, I think it's pretty quick for Law of One. I could go off and just keep going. But yes, the Black Lives Matter, and we need to feel with them and the atrocities, not just that group of humans experienced, but every downtrodden group of humans, every indigenous people that was uprooted or far worse, genocided. We need to feel with that as the same consciousness. Otherwise, it continues to persist as an illusion of separateness. And this is the plight of the victorious group, right? And even if you're living in America, you are benefiting from some of these egregious acts. And the egregious acts continue. There are still so many groups of people, other countries that are experiencing unnecessary pain and suffering to be able to buoy up the lifestyle of the American people. And we are definitely being asked to look at that. As the planetary grid ascends, we are definitely being asked to look at how everything is entangled with itself, right? Through quantum entanglement and the universal law of one, interconnectivity, and how we can better live in harmony with each other. And so it's absolutely crucial that we do this work. And I know it's tough. Like, core work is tough. And learning how to do handstand in the middle of the room is tough. But we need to redirect our focus. I'm not saying that protesting is wrong, and you can definitely go and do that if it brings you a certain joy, or if it instills meaning in your existence. But nothing replaces the physical practice. We have to actually learn how to hold space in our field to atone for these sins of our forefathers, to borrow the words of Jesus again. They are woven into the fabric of our beings. So we have to actually immerse ourselves in this alchemical excavation, self-realization, and illuminate this darkness. And I don't want to sound too doom and gloom, but until we do that, and this is kind of the fixed energy of the chart, this is definitely the fixed cross, right? And this is why also these animals are prominent in the Bible as well. We have the bull, the ox, the man bearing water, the Aquarius, so Taurus, Aquarius. We have the lion, Leo, and we also have the eagle usually is what it's referred to in biblical studies, but the scorpion, Scorpio. So there are these fixed universal laws that govern our whole existence. And if we continue to fight against them, then we will continue to be reprimanded, because the universal laws are constant. There's no way around it. So I will have to do another video on the Hermetic principles and the 8 limbs, each individually, but I did want to start with the universal law of one. So, and again, explain how we can release ourselves from this stagnation that is persisting in our field and repeating, because so many of us are like, well, I thought we were over this. I thought we were over racism, that it was no longer a thing. Why is it still with us? There's so much darkness, right? Of course it would reflect back at us as a fear of a race of people with a darker skin tone. It's embedded in our system, in our mind-body matrices, in each our own microcosms. That is the fear of our darkness, or literally our inability to share light from solar plexus, whose element is fire, also associated with the astral body, the sun. That is our inability to share life force energy with very, very prominent dark spots in our sphere of existence reflecting back at us. And you can protest all you want, but I'm telling you, it is going to persist until we clear it. So that's why I'm putting out as much information as I can. Again, I do truly believe that Kundalini is going to be the future currency, and I am financially stable enough to put this information out there without having to request a lot of money in exchange for this information I'm putting out. I just want us all to ascend with as much ease and grace as possible, because what's happening is as we run more and more Kundalini energy or cosmic energy through our microcosm, again, you are me, and so as I continue to do this work, more energy flows through you too, because we are all energetically linked up to the same system. And so as I run more energy, and it's not just me, there's a bunch of human beings that are really actively involved in the ascension process, because we're ready. We've had enough. We are ready to go. Then the distortions that you have in your field are going to be that much more agitated. So I want everybody to get on board. I want everybody to understand how to work with universal laws instead of unintentionally fighting against them. Because what we resist persists, right? And there are definitely some beings at play that are working behind the scenes that are definitely benefiting in terms of our current paradigm from the present day situation. And they're going to continue to do all that they can to keep it going, because again, they're actually already aware of how powerful energy is. And yes, they're making monetary gain too, but for the most part, they're making a lot of energetic gain and pulling energy off of us. You can kind of think of the movie Monsters, Inc., right? So it's a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war that we're involved in. And I'm so happy to be here and to give everything that I possibly can to this planetary ascension. And I want to work with you, so I don't want you to feel like I am all high and mighty. I've got my karmas too that I'm working through. I'm not an ascended master by any means. I do like to coordinate with the ascended masters and interact with them quite a bit, and they are teachers, and when you do learn how to connect from root to crown, then you can interact with them too on a regular basis. And of course with source, if you want to go straight to the source. Sometimes it's nice to, I love that part in the Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna is kind of pressuring Krishna, like, show me your true form, like, show me your awesomeness. And then, you know, Krishna shows him what he's all about, and then Arjuna's like, oh my gosh, go back to your avatar form, I can't handle it, it's too much. So but again, always remember, if you are interacting with avatars and the whatnot, that you are interacting with yourself, right? A reflection of yourself that makes it easier for your finite mind to understand and digest these concepts and how to integrate into your practice of being. So I will be back with an 8 limbs of yoga and the 7 hermetic principles. Those will probably be 2 separate videos, but I just definitely had to get this out there because, again, please don't cause harm to each other. There's so much of that. And again, they are purposefully invoking it because it causes your energy to just deplete. And of course, all that energy goes to other unseen beings that are pulling it off of you. So don't let that happen to you. Don't fall into the trap. And if you do want to peacefully protest, of course, I fully support whatever you feel guided to do. But remember that this is all a holographic projected reality, and the keys to ascending into a higher vibrational frequency formation, a higher vibrational frequency possible world, lie within you. So our real work is an inside job, and that's, I think, what they don't want you to realize. And they're us too, so I have a feeling that they come around and that they want to jump on board the Kundalini train too in the future. So we shall see. Again, it's all just a divine, beautiful unfolding, but hopefully this was beneficial. And again, remember that everyone is you. As Ram Dass says, everyone is God dressed in drag. And even if you think malicious thoughts about another person, all of that is sent up to the Akashic records. It's all stored in the universal consciousness. So eventually we all ascend and everyone is going to have access to it. So just keep that in mind. I like to think especially really nice thoughts about all beings, so that even though they're not connected to the universal consciousness quite yet, when they get there, they're like, "Aw, Liz." But yeah, and send some extra love to those beings that maybe are more frustrating in your reality now, because again, they are you, and they're shadow boxing with their own distortions in their own field. And what you can do too, I'll sometimes go up to the universal consciousness, and I learned how to do this when I was clearing some past life trauma. You can come back as them and then become aware of where their entities are and their stagnant energy is. And it's not invasion of privacy, especially if they are hoarding malicious thoughts about you. Then you have every right to go in and understand what distortions are causing those malicious thoughts, because it's a spell, it's a casting, and it is adversely affecting you. But when you understand it, then it clears it and it no longer has power over you. So again, we're all one, and start treating each other as such, of course, is all the greats say. And on such a deep level that you really truly, it's almost like you can feel yourself gazing back at yourself from the person that's standing before you. So, and you yourself, as you're gazing upon the person before you, can feel them eventually beaming up, beaming back down as you, and gazing at themselves as you, if that makes any sense. It's all one. Everything is one. It's really fun. It's not as simplistic and boring as it sounds. It's actually quite the opposite. It's the best. It's the final frontier, and it's so vast. So hopefully that this helps a little bit assuage all the tensions that are surmounting around all of the events that are happening in our nation and globally. And hopefully it compels you also to hold space in your own field of consciousness for the benefit of all beings. Keep on keeping on and ascending into higher vibrational frequencies. Loving you. Namaste. Peace.